How's it going, guys? So there's not much more going on this week since Packers are out of the playoffs, and we had Aaron Rodgers on his typical Tuesday Pat McAfee show interview. Let's move on beyond and the potential Aaron Rodgers talk and his future, and let's kind of look back at 2022. Yes, it was a terrible year, but let's look on the positives and the bright side. Let's try to uplift our spirits because this season was a very rough one, and it was pretty sad. So let's kind of look back at all the good memories and the top 10 players from 2022 on the Green Bay Packers. So getting right into it, starting at number 10, my opinion, our 10th best player was Quay Walker. The rookie was an absolute slam dunk for us at the end. Yes, he had a couple bumps in the road, and I say couple intentionally because of his two incidents with one, a practice squad player with the Bills, and a person of the training staff from the Lions. But if we look past that, as the season progressed, he started gaining more confidence and started flying around the field, and you could tell that this was going to be something good out of this rookie. He ended up the season with 121 tackles, which tied A.J. Hawk's Packers rookie record. And it's a shame because I feel like he could have easily broken that if he just didn't have two knucklehead moves against the Bills and the Lions. And he also had 1.5 sacks and 7 pass defenses. And despite looking a little bit lost in coverage early on the season, he actually ended the season being targeted against 45 times with only 24 completions, which ended up being a 53.3% completion percentage for 184 yards. And he only had 6 missed tackles for the season for a 4.7 missed tackle percentage. So overall, especially as a rookie coming to the NFL with such aspirations and the Packers having high hopes, especially as our first draft pick and a first-round draft pick, he actually did very well for us and was kind of one of the bright spots, and we could see the potential, and we're hopeful he makes that jump even more in year 2. Number 9, I put Allen Lazard here. This list is pretty difficult. I kind of didn't want to put a second receiver. Slight spoiler, you can probably guess who the other receiver I'm going to put in here. But I was kind of hesitant of putting Lazard. But overall in the season, if I take out the fact that he was supposed to be our number 1 receiver for this year, he had a decent season for us, especially since a lot of players did underperform. He did underperform under expectations, but I feel like those expectations were not warranted for him. And he kind of shouldn't have been put in that position, but he was. So he tried to do the best out of it as he could. As a run blocker, very essential for this team. He was a great run blocker. And in the passing game, he did lead our team with 60 receptions and 788 reception yards, which also led the team, and 6 touchdowns. He did have 6 drops this year, but overall, he was mostly consistent for us, and he was one of the actual bright spots on this team overall. Moving on to number 8, I have Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers definitely did not live up to his MVP level play, but we kind of shouldn't have expected that, and we didn't. But on the eye test and during some games, he did not look good. But overall, especially statistically, he did play very well, just not to his typical Aaron Rodgers status. Adding on the fact he had a broken thumb and all the other injuries with his chest rib injury, and then all the other variables he had at receiver and the line, I think he did the best as he could. Like, it was a tough situation for him, and he did some dumb stuff. I really hate to hear about. Overall, he did have a good statistical season, and he was a jumpstart to allow us to go on the run towards the tail end of the season, especially since at 4-8, we had no type of playoff aspirations, and towards the end of the season, we're wondering who we potentially could play in the wild card. And thank goodness we didn't get to the wild card, because I don't think I want to be swept again by the 49ers. But for the year, Aaron Rodgers did have 3,695 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. So really not a bad season. It's just not what we're used to, especially coming from Aaron Rodgers. But despite all that, he still had a very decent year for us. And on a team that was very downtrodden, I still think he was a top 10 player for us, and I think he was our 8th best player for the season. Number 7, I have here Christian Watson. Now, some people might wonder why I have Christian Watson so low on this list, especially when he tore it up. The problem is it was towards the tail end of the season, and it was only for a few games. Was it great that he finally came and started showing up and being that number 2 superstar? Well, maybe not superstar, but star receiver that was going to stretch the field and extend the defenses and pretty much, hey, we have a deep threat. Yes, he finally came aboard, but it was a long road there. He was injured during training camp. He was injured multiple times during the season. He started the season with a drop. I really need to stop saying that so we can just move on. But despite that, it took a while for him to get there. But once he got there, he definitely was a difference maker on this team. It's just he had a late start to it. So this is why I have him at number 7. And even though he was a rookie, we did have a lot of high hopes from him, and it was finally the deep threat we were looking for. He ended the season with 41 catches and 611 receiving yards and led the team with 7 touchdowns, especially during that stretch. Hopefully, he built some muscle in the offseason and is able to get past the injury woes that plagued him in his first season, and he takes the next step and actually can become a number 1 receiver for us because that dude can run. He is fast. Number 6, I have Elton Jenkins. Elton Jenkins was coming back this season from an ACL injury, and it was nice to see. We were a little bit afraid, especially with how Bakhtiari came back from his ACL injury. But it was nice to see his road to recovery and that he was going to be back sooner than later. Kind of on the path of Robert Tonyan at the time. And fortunately, he was able to settle down. He started off the season a little bit rough. We projected him to be our right tackle when healthy. But unfortunately, at right tackle, and it might have been too soon as he was still trying to come back into form from an ACL injury. He did struggle at the right tackle position, but once they moved him to left guard, he started settling in and started becoming that all-pro guard that we become used to from him. And he pretty much helped solidify our line, especially when he was pretty much consistently healthy and only missing a couple games throughout the season once he came back. Number 5, I wanted to put this player a little bit higher, but unfortunately his constant unknowingness of availability this season kind of hindered this, but David Bakhtiari. David Bakhtiari has had a long road of recovery, and a lot of us just were pretty much ready to cut him. Like, it didn't seem like he was going to ever come back. But he finally got past all the hiccups and all the injuries, and he was that all-pro, all-star left tackle. He shut down, he solidified it on the left side and was Aaron Rodgers' guardian angel as he was before the injury, and it was nice to have him back. Unfortunately, he, once again, after he came back after a game or two, went out with a sudden surgery that he had to get done, which knocked him out for a few more games and once again was out of the lineup. But once he came back, that left side with Elton Jenkins was solidified, and he was unstoppable. And hopefully next season, he is truly past all the injury problems he had the past couple of years, because he obviously showed when he's healthy and on the field, he is still one of the best left tackles in the game. Number 4, I feel like he could have been our number 2, but unfortunately injury derailed his season. Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary was on a career year, starting for the first 9 games before going out with an ACL injury. He was a difference maker. He was pretty much one of the only couple of players showing up on our defense and was a big part of how we were getting pressure towards the quarterback. And he seemed a bit unstoppable for us. In those 9 games, he ended up with 32 total tackles, 6 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 12 QB hits, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. And throughout those entire 9 games, he only missed 1 tackle. He was a difference maker for us, and I wish we would have had the entire season, because I'm kind of curious when the defense started picking up their stuff at the tail end of the year, how much more lethal this defense could have been with Rashawn Gary at the helm. At number 3, I have our all-pro cornerback, Jaire Alexander. Alexander was amazing for us this year and pretty much had a career year. He started 16 games for us, and in those 16 games, he was targeted 82 times, which is a little shocking. They targeted him so much, but only allowed 49 completions, which ended up being a 59.8% completion percentage, and only allowed 2 touchdowns for the season, all the while picking off quarterbacks 5 times for a career best. When fellow quarterbacks decided to target Jaire Alexander, they had a quarterback rating of 63.7, which was also a career best for him. He was definitely our best defender in the back end, and it was kind of frustrating that he wasn't following the number 1 receiver every game, but either way, for what they asked him to do, he definitely backed up his talk and was one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Number 2, I have here Kashawn Nixon. Kashawn Nixon came in late in the season, but when he finally got the job at kick returner, it was a world of a difference. And this was an all new Packers team. For once, in what feels like forever, we had a special teams unit, especially on the kick return, that was feared. I don't remember the last time we were feared on kick returns. Honestly, it was kind of a laughingstock because it felt like Rodgers could fumble all the time. But Kashawn Nixon finally got the job, and he did not look back. He ended up getting voted into AP's first team All-Pro team. He ended up leading the NFL in kick return yards, and his biggest highlight is a 105-yard kick return against the Minnesota Vikings. Ah, man. Welcome to no playoff life, guys. Sucks. You guys are so hopeful. So beautiful. But moving on. Kashawn Nixon was definitely a breath of fresh air and was a dangerous threat for us. But with Kashawn Nixon finally there, we actually had a legitimate special teams and kick return threat, and it definitely helped our offense in that run. Then lastly, our number one player, which is probably not going to be a shock to any Packer fan. He's obviously our best player this year, and that was Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was our versatile running back who did everything that we could ask of him. Despite getting older in age, he seemed to only get better, and Matt LaFleur, in kind of pacing and not overworking him, actually worked to his advantage. He ended up setting new career highs in rushing yards with 1,121 yards while also scoring 5 touchdowns, and was second on our team in receptions at 59, one behind Alan Lazard. So he was definitely everything to this team. And pretty much if he wasn't getting it going, our offense wasn't getting it going. If our offense was moving, he was probably a big reason of why our offense was moving. So he was obviously our best player on the entire team, and there's really no disputing that. But that is my ranking of our top 10 best players this year. It's nice to finally look at some of the positives and getting out of our sorrows of, hey, the Packers didn't make the playoffs. But nice reverse. The Vikings joined us after all of that trash talk they did. So welcome once again. Love to have you here. And of course, let me know what you think down in the comments. Is there a player that I didn't mention that you felt did better than one of these top 10 players that I did? If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, go Pack Go.